What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about Shari and Lamb. This is a 2025 documentary which I was offered a screener for back in July. And I responded with, yeah, I'd love to screen this movie. And if you have an available English audio description track with it, please send my way. And crickets was what I got. I got the sound of crickets, which is something that happens a lot when I mention English audio description, and it seems from reps for films. So I don't understand it. This is not the first time, but I, you guys know that your film's coming to video on demand at some point, right? I mean, you do know that. You know you can't actually stop me from reviewing your film. Fucking, this would be just so much easier. Then I wouldn't talk about it at the beginning of the film. But yeah, so I would have gotten one for this, but I think I was denied one because I was blind. So there you go. And Shari and Lamb. Watched it anyway, but it doesn't have audio description. That's fine. It feels like it will, because it feels like something that's going to get picked up by PBS, and then it'll have audio description. That'll be my guess. I've seen a couple documentaries this year that just wind up on one of the PBS platforms, and I'm like, oh, looks like Janice Ian Breaking Silence ended up getting audio description after all. So I could totally see that happening for Shari and Lamb. But what is it? Well, since it's basically the life story of Shari Lewis, who started out really young as a teenager with ventriloquism, and starting out on like a talent show back in the day. Her dad was big into sort of magic and ventriloquism and all that kind of stuff, and at least that's what I picked up from this documentary. And she had support from her parents, who helped get her on to the talent show, and her career just kind of took off from there. And she was a female ventriloquist in a male dominated arena. And also she kind of ended up becoming the first TV children's host of a show. She ends up getting her own TV show at a time when people weren't making shows for kids. And her Shari and Lamb ended up becoming obviously her most well-known and successful puppet. And they just had all these lovely times, and she sang all these songs, and she did all these commercials and did everything she was supposed to do, and was really popular for many years and appeared on all these different shows. And then eventually we go through sort of a career bump in the road where she gets canceled, and then spends the 60s sort of hopping around various TV shows until later on she gets sort of a resurgence, and her and Lamb start getting popular again and start making appearances again. And eventually PBS orders a new Shari and Lamb show, which leads her up until eventually her death. Shari Lewis is no longer alive, by the way. Heads up, spoiler alert. Although they use a lot of either archival, like of her speaking in other interviews past, or God, I hope it's not the AI thing that they did with the Ed Sullivan documentary. I gotta stop doing that. So her children participate, or at least her daughter does here. There are a bunch of people who participated. I didn't have audio description, so I didn't know who any of them were. But it's a pretty brief. It's under 90 minutes, just shy of it. I think it was like 86 minutes. And yeah, it just kind of flew by. I liked the documentary. My mom loved it, and it was a good time. It's not a documentary that's going to win an Oscar this year. It's not deep enough for that, and it's not trying to be. It doesn't even have Won't You Be My Neighbor is probably the biggest comp here, and this like the obvious like smack you in the face comp in terms of documentaries. And what that one did for Fred Rogers was show a little bit of more of his activism and of other things that he did outside of just the producing the show. Your sure doesn't really isn't really pushing or advocating for anything. It's just sort of like this is her life. This is what it was like. This is the ups and downs, and this is who she was. This is all the stuff that she managed to accomplish, and it doesn't really pull or stretch at the image at all. It keeps her mostly as being this trailblazing, uh, amazing human being that had very little flaws, that just kind of danced and sang through life. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine to think that she was the host of a children's television show, and this movie has the involvement of her family, and it has the same problem that any movie that it has the family so deeply involved is going to have, which is we don't want you to talk about that, or we don't want to talk about that. And I don't know what that stuff is that you don't want to talk about, but it does kind of feel like that this is just more like a celebration of who Shari Lewis, and Lamb Chop, the imagery and the legacy that they left behind, than possibly any sort of dissection of Shari Lewis and who she really was when the cameras weren't rolling, what her life was really like, what her relationships were really like, what were the things that she liked, what did she do outside of, I mean, it's such a surface level documentary because it's focused so much on the Shari and Lamb Chop show that we don't really get to know what she was like as a parent. Like, it never talks about that. It just like her daughter Mallory just suddenly finally just like winds her way back to, and she's like, well, I got a divorce and I started working on my mom's show. And then what was your childhood like? What was it like working for the host of a children's television show? Because they did actually talk about that in Won't You Be My Neighbor? Like, you actually had Fred Rogers' kids talking about what it was like to have Fred Rogers at home. So, I mean, like, Won't You Be My Neighbor is a little bit stronger of a documentary because it knew that it needed to have those things. Shari and Lamb Chop is basically just like, well, we know people love Shari and Lamb Chop, and we haven't talked about it in a while, so let's talk about it. Let's bring this back. And great. I think it's going to end up preaching to the choir. I don't know that it's going to introduce Gen Z to Shari and Lamb Chop. I was always aware of Shari and Lamb Chop, but I don't really remember how. Like, I know I saw something. It might have been in like reruns on PBS or something, but definitely I was surprised at just having to really think about like the timing of everything and thinking about like when I was a kid, because I'm not of the generation. There's a point where they talk about this revival, this last Lamb Chop show coming after Barney and Power Rangers. I'm like, well, I would have been watching Lamb Chop at that age. I was watching that in like the 80s. So somewhere in the 80s, there was some Lamb Chop on something, and I was watching it because I was fully aware of like who Lamb Chop was when I was little. So yeah, it was a nice documentary. I don't have anything wrong with this documentary. How does the lack of audio description affect it? Surprisingly, it's not like a steamroller full of dialogue. I feel like there are plenty of cutaways where we could have had something or some text is being read on the screen. There are these little like blips in the timing where I feel like a pretty decent AD narrator would find definitely a lot of stuff to add in. Plus, it would have been nice to know who was talking. But the just the sheer focus of subject matter, like the Shari Lewis and Lamb Chop. I I also, in these reviews, I don't want to assume that blind people are stupid. I think we can figure out what this movie's about, and I think you can follow it. You'll have a little bit of a hard time with like, who is this and why are they talking? But other than that, I mean, This movie is pretty much exactly what it says it is. So, Shari and Lamb Chop is it's perfectly fine. Uh, it's just maybe like a documentary of little consequence. I feel like this year we're gonna get some heavy documentaries about, I don't know, the world being on fire, and some of these documentaries I've seen this year that are just sort of like, well, that was nice. Just by the end of the year, you're going to be talking about like, did you see the one with the children and they were on fire? And that's going to be it, and that's done. So, not that I want to see kids on fire, but I feel like that's something's going to happen. So, yeah, I'm going to give this a 7.7 out of 10. It's so fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So, whoever your fucking publicist is, you dodged me, but I don't know why. Like, I don't. I mean, I suppose there's always the opportunity or the possibility that your film is so wildly inaccessible that I wouldn't be able to understand it. Would have to give it a rotten score, but take the risk, man. I mean, I'm a fair critic. So, there you go. Shari and Lamb Chop, fresh, even though its publicist didn't want me to see it. That I saw it for your entertainment. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.